Hello, this is Alonzo Bodden, and much to the consternation of the Hulk, I am welcoming you to my podcast, episode 373, which we are recording at a time that he is normally in the backyard playing ball, so he is just basically laying here wondering what the hell's going on. And I'm sitting here wondering what the hell's going on. As I pulled my articles and stories for the podcast this week, I didn't intend it to be all about race, but that's what just kept popping up. But not the ordinary stuff. We keep reaching new bottoms, new levels of stupid. Ron DeSantis, I said this over a year ago. DeSantis and Abbott, Florida and Texas, are in a contest to see who can out-stupid each other. And right now, DeSantis is taking a lead. Stupid, racist, horrible, comical policy of sending, quote, illegal aliens to sanctuary cities. He just sent, 50 people? I think it was 50. I'm not sure. I want to say it was 50 people He sent 50 undocumented immigrants to Martha's Vineyard. Now, by the way, they went from Florida to Texas to Massachusetts. Florida has budgeted $12 million, which they're getting from the federal government for other things. But anyway, they budgeted $12 million to shipping, quote, illegal immigrants to other states and so-called sanctuary cities. It's DeSantis' way of having a tantrum and whatever else. Okay, my first question is, how is he not being charged with trafficking? Isn't that trafficking to send somebody who is in the country illegally to attempt to smuggle them or move them to a different city rather than deal with immigration? Isn't that illegal? Isn't that the definition of trafficking? I would think so. But here's the thing about him sending them to Martha's Vineyard. And by the way, the people of Martha's Vineyard took them in. They fed them. They've found a place, I think at a college or somewhere, for them to sleep. And they're going to figure it out because they're human and they're Christian. See, that would be the Christian thing to do, even though these so-called Christian people like DeSantis and Abbott and these hardcore right-wingers, yeah, that's exactly what Jesus would do. Just send people some, yeah, right. So we know that. But here's the thing. I didn't know this. This is fascinating. This isn't the first time they've done this. They've got experience in this. Back in 1962, there were black people. That's the only thing they changed. They changed who they hate from black people in the South to these immigrants in the South. But in 1962, there was a group of white people that called themselves, let me see, they had a name for themselves. Sorry, I know I should look this up quicker, but I'm getting it. Okay. They called themselves the White Citizens Council, and they called it the Reverse Freedom Rides. And what they did was they rounded up black people and sent them up north to Hyannis, I think it's pronounced Hyannis, where John F. Kennedy spent summers, and they wanted to send the black people to Kennedy. So this is the same thing. This is 60 years later. These people haven't advanced one bit. They've only found a different group to practice their hate and racism on. They sent them up to Hyannis. These black people had no connection there. They told them there'd be jobs, this and that. What these white people were calling it was the reversed freedom rides. Remember, the freedom rides in the 60s were when northern people went to the South to register black voters and to try to protect black voters and allow them to vote. Now, here is the thing, and this is how little it has changed, okay? This is a quote from that White Citizens Council. Quote, for many years, certain politicians, educators, and certain religious leaders have used the white people of the South as a whipping boy. They were the victims. they were the victims. Can you imagine being white in 1962 and deciding you were the victim in dealing with race in America? It is the exact same thing going on now. It is the exact same thing. We have not progressed. And this is going to relate to what I'm closing the podcast with. But it's mind-blowing. 60 years, not one bit of progression. The exact same thing being done and still working. And the only difference is now it's not just a group of random hateful white people. It's the actual government. 2 actual governors and governments in the United States sending people to other states based on racism. Unbelievable, and yet it's not. I've said this before, I'll say it again. The word unbelievable has no meaning anymore because it's absolutely believable, and this is absolutely being done. And the reason it bothers me so much with the immigrants is because these white people, okay, not all white people, but these white people, they act as if their grandparents or parents or great-grandparents, whoever, came to the United States speaking perfectly English with a full-time job and a bank account. No, they didn't. They came in like every other immigrant group in the early 1900s, just like the Latin immigrants are coming in now, and they were allowed to make it. That's the only difference. And am I just talking shit? No. Listen, I have personal experience with this. My dad was a Latin immigrant, okay? My dad came to the United States from Honduras in the 1930s. And my dad worked the American dream. That's right. And miraculously, and I will always have so much respect for doing this, got the job, worked, bought a house, raised us, got us educated, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and by the way, he was a Latin immigrant, but it was done at a time when he was a nigger. You know why? Because he looked black. That's right. He was in America. America was segregated, and he looked black, and racists are too dumb to realize there are Latinos that look black. So he was treated second class. He was discriminated against. It was part of the government, the segregation and all. He made it anyway. Super respect for him. No respect for these anti-immigrant, racist white people that think they somehow built the country or that their ancestors came over here. Shut up. Shut up. All right? You're an embarrassment to America. You're an embarrassment to what America is. And it is remarkable that 60 years later, these racists still have the power, even more power, to do the exact same thing. Disgusting. America, do better. And I'm going to get to that because we're not doing better. Okay. Like I said, it wasn't planned, but racism just keeps coming up. Piper Lewis, 17 years old, charged with the killing of her rapist. This white man kept her as hostage, as a prisoner, raped her, had others rape her, trafficked her for sex. She was 15 years old. He was 37. She stabbed him to death while he was sleeping. Guess what? She has to go on very strict probation and pay $150,000 in restitution to his family. Let me say that again. He kidnapped her, kept her, trafficked her, had other people have sex with her, along with raping her multiple times. She killed him in his sleep to escape, and she has to pay a $150,000 fine. Why is this racist? Well, let's just think if a white girl did this. Let's just flip the script. Flip the script. A white girl is held captive by a 15-year-old white girl held captive by a 37-year-old black man. He rapes her continually, then allows his friends to rape her. She kills him in his sleep and escapes. Do you really think this white girl would be paying a $150,000 fine and be put on severe probation, or would she be treated like a hero, or at least like a victim who escaped? Once again, disgusting. You're telling me there's not a double standard? This is utterly ridiculous. This is horrific. Horrific. Yeah. Prosecutors, here's a great line. Prosecutors took issue with Lewis calling herself a victim and said she failed to take responsibility for stabbing Brooks and, quote, leaving his kids without a father. Aw, Oh, your rapist dad was killed and now you don't have a father. Well, who's going to teach the next generation to rape? Yeah, I'm not even making light of this. This is real. This is how they learn this. This is what's being taught. This is this lesson here, okay? It is. The judge peppered Lewis with repeated requests to explain the poor choices she made that led up to Brooke's stabbing. And she sometimes did not want to follow the rules set up for her in juvenile lockup. Yeah, she didn't want to follow the rules that led to her being repeatedly raped. It's amazing, Your Honor. Incredible. Listen, this girl may have been in trouble as a kid. This girl may have been in juvie or whatever. The sentence does not include being raped multiple times at 15 while you're held hostage and passed around amongst grown men. And if that doesn't push you to kill the guy to escape, if you're not sitting there thinking, well, I could kill him and escape, but what about his kids? Are you out of your fucking mind? Unreal. That's just that's just story number 2. Let's keep going. U.S. highways continue to segregate and destroy communities. Now, I don't know if you know the history of highways and freeways being built in the cities, but back when they were all being built, back in the 40s and 50s, when this great construction of U.S. infrastructure was done, the highways and freeways were always routed through black or brown communities. Okay, that's whose homes the government would seize. That's whose neighborhoods would be destroyed. And they would build these highways. And they also built the highways as a barrier to separate the blacks from the whites. Here in LA, we have I-10. North of the 10 is white. South of the 10 is black. That's South Central LA, south of the 10. This isn't anything new. What's incredible is still being done. So right now they're about to do it in Houston. They're breaking ground. They're going to build a new highway. They're going to destroy a couple of more black and brown neighborhoods. The Clayton Homes, which is kind of I guess a historic area, and all this despite decades of evidence that widening highways does little to relieve congestion. Now, granted, traffic in Houston is horrible, but you know what? Traffic everywhere is horrible. Building more highways isn't going to change it, particularly not building more highways through black neighborhoods, okay? They were protests, they're fighting it, but it's going to be done. And here's the thing. It's not just separating of the cities. Another thing that the highways have done, and this again back when they were being built, they were a quick path to the suburbs. This is why a lot of cities died. They built these big highways as a quick path to the suburbs, so you didn't have to live in the city to work in the city. You could live in the suburbs and buy a house and live the American dream if you were white. Because if you were black or brown or some other minority, you weren't allowed to buy houses in the subways. That was called redlining. See, all of this is the history. This is what we talk about when we talk about systematic racism in the history of the United States. Are we better? Yeah, we could be. But should we learn from the past? Absolutely. Should we still be doing the same thing we did 60 years ago, 80 years ago, whatever? No. And this is why these white racists, not all white people, but certainly these white racists, these white right-wingers in power, don't want to teach history, because they don't want their kids to know we've been racist for a long time and we're not here because of our hard work and pulling ourselves up to our bootstraps by our bootstraps. We're here because we got a big head start, and we're afraid to not give you the same head start. That's what's going on. How bad does it get? How ridiculous is it? You've already heard this one, no doubt, because this is huge, unfortunately huge news. The Little Mermaid has been cast by the mermaid. Ariel in The Little Mermaid is cast as a black woman. Halle Bailey is starring in a live-action remake of The Little Mermaid. The racists are so angry. They are so angry. mind you, mermaids aren't real. I did a bit about this 2 years ago when they first talked about it. Mermaid, okay, let's say it again for the people in the cheap seats. Mermaids are not real. They don't have a color, okay? But they're so upset that this group has developed a way online, okay, to change the color of the actress in the film so that she'll be white. Okay, let me say that again. They have come up with a way to digitally change the actress in the film so that she would be white. They are so angry. They are so angry that they want to, like, have you seen I guess it's like the colorization of the old black and white movies? I don't know. I don't know how they do it. But here's the thing. They did this. Now, is it going to work? No. Disney's lawyers are going to destroy these idiots. But think of the brain power, the energy, the time. Think how hard you had to work. This group of people who obviously have some knowledge of computers and technology and filmmaking, etc. Think of all the good things they could do with this knowledge and this time, instead of digitally altering a mermaid. No, I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say ridiculous. I'm going to say mind-blowing. My brother has a saying, if only they use their powers for good. Imagine what they could have created. They could have created something, but instead they choose to destroy something. Why? Racism. Finally, on the topic of racism and destroying things and poor education, etc., the United States is doing great at becoming a developing country. That's right. We are a developing country. In the global rankings, the United Nations Office of Sustainable Development dropped the United States to 41st worldwide. 41st. We rank between Cuba and Bulgaria as developing countries. Now, why? Well, the United States is considered a flawed democracy because of the red states and the insurrection. Racism has cheated many Americans out of health care, education, economic security, and an environment they deserve. Threats to democracy have become more serious, and a devotion to American exceptionalism keeps the country from candid appraisals and course corrections. Now, here's the thing. This Office of Sustainable Development, and by the way, the right wing will hate it simply because it's the UN. But this is how they rank it. They rank people on the experiences of ordinary people, including the ability to enjoy clean air and water. Imagine that. Jackson, Mississippi, clean water. They rank based on that rather than just wealth and creation of wealth. There's no doubt the United States has the biggest economy in the world, and we do quite well with it. But that's not what they look at. They look at the quality of life of ordinary people who need things like education, health care, housing, dealing with climate issues, clean air, clean water. We're 41st. We're working our way down. Guess what? We're becoming a shithole. Yeah, we didn't become great again. We're actually becoming a shithole. This was brought up by W.E.B. Du Bois, talking about the structural inequality of the United States back in 1899. Martin Luther King talked about it. The difference now is, Martin Luther King led to Kennedy looking at the two Americas, the other America, starting the war on poverty, which of course is doing great if you're, Brett Favre and you want to take the money that's supposed to go to poor people and pay yourself get paid millions of dollars to make speeches. Yeah, how's that working out? So the U.S., we are just not doing well. We are not doing well. We're doing great in average income per person, okay? We're not doing great in school. Average income per person is $64,765. That's really good. 13.7 years of schooling, it puts us in the developed world. The United States, we're doing good on the democracy thing. We rank between Estonia and Chile. We fall short of being a full democracy in large part because of a fractured political culture, the growing divide between the red and the blue states, and that whole insurrection intended to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. We're not doing well, and you know it. And here's the thing. Now the world knows it. The world sees it. But we still, and then getting right back to where we started, the DeSantis, the Abbotts, the right-wingers, this goes back to Sarah Palin and her time. America's the greatest country in the world. You've been to another country? Don't have to. Yeah, the whole world sees it. We're slipping. I've said this numerous times. I stand by it. We are the greatest and the worst country in the world at the same time. What if we lose the worst part? Maybe we can move up from 41st. Maybe if we stop. Oh, another thing they talked about in this is gender discrimination and reproductive rights. You know, when you flip Roe v. Wade and you start making abortion illegal, you kind of lose ground on the world stage as to how you treat women. But what if we took a chance and treated women fairly and accepted minorities and immigrants? What if we didn't lose our minds because someone changed their pronoun? What if we spent money on education instead of losing our fucking minds because broke young people need a $10,000 break on $100,000 school loans? Yeah. What if we did any of that? We might make America great again. I'm sorry, this is not where I intended to go with the podcast. I will end on a high note because, as you know, stupid don't get tired, and I love it because stupid is also fun to watch. And I learned a new term. It's called Tourons. It's the combination of the word tourist with morons. So another Touron got knocked down by a bison. Fortunately, well, some would say fortunately, I wouldn't, but not gored to death, not stomped, but he was trying to feed a bison. A bison's a 2,000-pound animal with horns on the front that is not domesticated in any way. So I'm going to walk up on it and feed it some grass so I can get a video, which is good because now we all get the video of the bison knocking your stupid ass to the ground. So there's that. A little levity to this week's podcast. This weekend, I'm going to St. Louis. I'm hosting the Smooth Jazz Cruise on land. I can't wait. I miss all the jazz artists that I'm usually work with every year on the cruises, so it's going to be fun doing that. Next week, I'm headed back to Seattle to Laughs Comedy Club. I've got some guests coming up on the podcast. It's going to really be fun. I've done a couple of fun podcasts. One you can find called The Smoking Tire, where I talk with Matt Farah about cars and motorcycles and such. And another podcast I did, the Greg Fitzsimmons podcast. Greg Fitzsimmons is just a phenomenal comic, comes from a radio background, and I love talking to him. So you can find those podcasts and get a break from my podcast, which isn't exactly cheerful this week. But just know that we can do better. The entire country isn't racist. Unfortunately, we have two governors that are idiots and children, and man, if they could be convicted of trafficking, it'd be a beautiful thing. And if all else fails and you're really having a bad day, just look up Man Feeds Bison on YouTube and enjoy the moment. I'm sure the bison did. Thank you.